L- l- Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. I hope everybody's having a beautiful day. Hope the sun is shining where you are. I hope that you understand that the birds are singing a special tune for you today and that the wind is at your back. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce our special guest, Tristan Rushworth. Tristan is no stranger to the challenges of growing a business while juggling various aspects of life. As a co-founder who successfully took a tech startup from zero to over 7 figures in annual recurring revenue, he has faced his fair share of trials and errors, which have taught him invaluable lessons about what works and what doesn't. Tristan understands the intricate art of balancing sales, marketing, and working on the business, all while striving for the elusive work-life balance. His solution is to simplify and focus, and this journey is made easier with someone like him in your corner, helping you reverse engineer the steps necessary to achieve your business and personal goals. He is a driving force behind Unbound, a community designed by founders for founders, with the mission to support entrepreneurs in scaling their revenue without burning out. Tristan and his team at Unbound provide tried and tested strategies along with the essential elements of mindset and accountability to foster sustainable growth. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to you Tristan Rushworth. Tristan, how's it going, my friend?
Very good. Thank you, George. That's probably the most energized and thorough welcome I've ever had. So, yeah, grateful for it.
Well, I'm stoked you're here. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many. Prior to starting the show, you and I just began talking about the what happens when you begin listening to life and allowing the world to talk to you through other people. And maybe you could give people a little bit of a background on your journey. Like, how did it begin to unfold? How did you end up where you are today? And like, how did you get to this interesting mindset? That's kind of a big question, but why don't you fire off somewhere where you want to begin at?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that is a big question to start with.
Right?
I would say, just a pretty normal bloke. I would say I was born in a working class town in the north of England, and yeah, that early stage of growing up shapes my early mindset and view on the world, I would say, and especially my early career as well. So I got very into chasing things, chasing money,
Sure.
for wanting freedom for myself, really. And that led me to a career in banking, which I did for 15 years, lived in London, kind of on the rat race. And then I met my wife and my whole world changed. So my wife, Amy, she's a coach, very into spirituality. She's a breathwork coach, amazing woman, very supportive, and didn't kind of like push me in any direction, but kind of showed me the path of in a number of different ways, and especially with inspiring me to do what I'd always dreamed of in starting a business. And not long after we met, actually, I had the idea for a tech startup, which I founded with my best friend, and now one of my best friends, a third co-founder, called Fortis. That business helps personal trainers in the fitness space grow online businesses. And yeah, that was an incredible journey. And I feel like I've been on this path trying to find my purpose, which felt like this ethereal thing that I would never get to. And maybe that is part of it, where it's just like a journey where you kind of, figure out what's your purpose at each step in your life. And I'm really big into personal development and working on myself, which I'm sure we can get into some of that stuff. But part of that journey for me has been really getting into breath work and body work techniques, because in some of the jobs that I've had in finance and then starting a tech startup, loads of pressure, loads of stress. And I've always been pretty good when it comes to habits, discipline. I'm very into health and fitness. I've always been into kind of like trying to optimize my mind, but I feel like I'd missed 50% of the equation with what I'd learned until I found breath work, because I was trying to solve everything from my head, and that worked until it didn't. And it was my wife again that showed me breath work. She got me a session for my birthday, actually. When we still lived in London. She said, You need to be home at a certain time. Don't be late. I've got a surprise. Came home. Hot Italian lady in our apartment. I was like, what's going on here? We don't have this kind of relationship. And she was a breathwork coach. So she took me through my first breathwork session, and that blew my mind. I had no idea that you could do these kind of things with breathwork. And I'm sure we can get into this, but it basically just showed me the power and the innate wisdom that's in all of our bodies, that we don't have to solve everything from the mind, that actually the body's so wise and can support us on this journey. And so I'd just kind of been using these tools and techniques in the background to help myself. And then, I just got this kind of sense, this calling, I guess I would say, for sharing these techniques with more people, because I just realized that lots and lots of people were going through the same journey as me, of dealing with loads of stress, loads of pressure, struggling to sleep, struggling to switch off. And so then I decided, right, I'm gonna learn more about this, dive into it, do some qualifications, and then share it with more people. And thankfully, we've got an amazing team at Fortis, and the business was in such a good place that I was able to take a step back from the day-to-day running and focus on helping founders with these techniques. And then that journey then led me to meet my new co-founder, Rich, at Unbound. And Rich is like a bit of a brother from another mother, I think, where we just kind of have the very different skill sets, but the same view of the world of what we're really interested in. We're really interested in business and helping support amazing entrepreneurs. But not only with business strategies and tactics and growth, also looking after the founders of the business. That's the thing that we're really passionate about. So we work on things like mindset, behavior change, habits, techniques like breath work to help with the nervous system. And then we also bring guest experts into the community, because it's a community that we bring together as well. Because I think, for me, it's like you can go on these journeys of personal development on your own in isolation is good at times, but I think it's also good to go through these journeys as part of a community as well, with other people that can relate and support you with those challenges. So yeah, that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of what I've been up to. Yeah.
I love it. It's interesting to me to see like the Ariadne thread that connects it all. You could take it back to breath. And if we go back to the first thing that happens when you come into this world is a doctor spanks your butt and you take your first breath. And we often hear the death doulas talk about people taking their last breath. But in some ways, that first breath is that very thing that you get to breathe in the world. We forget about it. Like whether you're through a teenager or a kid, we forget that we always have our breath with us. It's like this amazing tool that we could choose to focus on, that will center us with our body, that will allow us to see the world differently. We're never taught any of that kind of stuff. What was it like when you took that breath class and you rediscovered, holy cow, I got this amazing tool that can change my outlook on everything? What was it like?
It was incredible. I felt like somebody must have spiked my drink with all the drugs.
Right.
So the type of breath work I did in that first session is called rebirthing breath work. And what you do, I don't know if you've ever experienced rebirthing breath work, George. It's you breathe for between 60 minutes and an hour and a half, and you breathe in just a conscious, connected way. It's a very simple breath, but what it does is it energizes your whole body, and you can shift energy in your body. And then also, because of the change in carbon dioxide that happens as you're breathing like this, you effectively turn off your prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of your brain, and activate the limbic amygdala part of your brain, like the kind of the prehistoric parts of your brain. And so what I experienced in that first session was completely getting out of my head, turned off my conscious brain. And what I was left with, what's going on underneath. So much was going on underneath. And I actually got the idea from my first business from that session, because I could just see things in complete clarity. So yeah, it was amazing. And then I also had a big release at the end of the session as well. I cried for about 15 minutes for the first time in about 15 years, because my winning formula had always been, I don't need to go near these quote unquote negative emotions. I would just suppress things, because that was kind of my winning formula. And nobody could have told me otherwise. I had to experience the fact that, and have my own realization that actually that's not a great way to go about life. From my experience, what it felt like to me is it was like I'd been piling up the toilet for 15 years and not letting it flush. And I just, had a big emotional release, and I felt incredible after. It was unbelievable. So yeah, I felt like I'd lifted all the weights off my shoulders and just left that stuff at the door. So yeah, it was incredible.
I love that. I love language. And when I hear you say things like, I had this clarity, does that mean you could see from like a different perspective, or does it like, maybe you could flesh that out? Like you had the first idea for your business and you had this clarity. Can you describe to us, like, maybe what was that clarity? What did that look like?
So at that time, I'd been trying to think of an idea for a business, and it was almost like I couldn't see the wood for the trees. I was looking and missing all of the parts that were around, and that clarity, the experience for me was laying there towards the end of that breathwork session. It was like all the jigsaw pieces had been floating around in my head, and then it all just landed and all just made sense. And it was just like a deep sense of knowing. And that's been my experience with the breath, is it reconnects you with your body. And when we do that, you can start to reconnect with the power that you've got in there for things like your intuition and your trust. You know, I really believe that these metaphors that we have of trust your heart, listen to your gut, are more than just metaphors. You know, from a scientific perspective, they look at all of the neurons that surround these organs. There's so much data and information that comes from your heart and comes from your gut that actually it's not all just from our head. It's not just the head and the brain that's the thinking part of this amazing body. But yeah, it was kind of like experiencing that was so powerful for me.
I love it. I think it speaks to the relationship with spirituality. On some ways, when I hear what you're saying, and it sounds to me like when you just listen to the words like reconnection, clarity, listen to your heart. Like these are all signs of people who have found more meaning in their life. And maybe you could speak to what is the relationship between breath and spirituality? What was it for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't have said I'd grown up a particularly spiritual guy, but this journey that I've been on with the breath has definitely reconnected me with spirituality, because I think my experience of spirituality has been that it's kind of like a bit like personal development, figuring out what does that mean to each individual, that it's not, subscribing to one particular feeling, belief, that actually it's quite a personal thing. And, there's these things that we hear about all the time, like human consciousness. And what my experience has been is just kind of really understanding and realizing that there's so much that we don't know as human beings. And, if we went back 300 years, like the stuff that we know now that we didn't know then, probably the same is going to be happening in the next 300 years. And I think probably science in these fields will probably get a lot clearer on things like consciousness and things that we call spirituality, that actually there's so much that we don't know. But I've found by somatic techniques like breath work have enabled me to get into a place where I'm not so much in my mind, where I'm actually just kind of like more accepting of like who I am underneath these layers of identity that I've built up over my life, and just being a bit more able to sit with who I really am underneath. And that for me is translated into like in lots of different ways that it's helped me to kind of get out of this cycle of constantly relying on external factors
Yeah.
for happiness, gratification. I mean, that's definitely a journey that I'm on, but it's definitely helping. But then also it's helping me, I feel like, connect at a deeper level with other people. You know, I think
Yeah.
being more connected with my body and my emotions has then translated to making it easier for me to connect with other people, both inside and outside of work, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it's contagious. And I've been speaking to so many different people who are talking about different healing modalities. And I'm curious to get your opinion. It seems, at least where I was raised, and if you listen to a lot of the news or whatever, when there's a sickness, it's a contagious. People get ill, they give each other a cold, they give each other a sickness. But might healing be the same way? And if I just look at the story so far, here you found this technique to help you uncover who you are. You have a company called Unbound. Your relationships are getting better. Like, that sounds like a contagious, uplifting spiritual thing that's happening. What do you think about health and contagion and breath work? Is this all contagious?
I think so. Yeah, I think it really is. You know, I think the people that you surround yourself with, the energy, like the thoughts that you think about
Yeah.
yourself, how you spend your time, like I think all of these things just like I think if you could analyze who someone's surrounded by, what they're thinking, what their behaviors are, what their habits are right now, you could really quickly plot on a map where someone's happiness and health is, I think. And yeah, I think it goes way beyond sort of like thinking about traditional Western medicine and a lot of
Yeah.
things. You know, I mean, that's definitely, I believe, got its place, but you know, I think there's so much more for us in terms of like, you know, the healing power of the mind and the body. You know, as I said before, I think there's innate wisdom in there that if we learn to trust it, there's so much power there. But then, you know, I think, I think it's all a journey. I'm still learning anyway. But I definitely agree with you. Yeah.
Have you experienced different? So when you had that first breathwork session, I'm sure you've had other kinds. Is there different things that happen when you do breathwork by yourself versus being in a group setting, or is there breathwork in a group setting, or
Yeah,
what's going on here?
I think there's a different energy when you do breath work in a group setting for
Mm,
sure. And that can be positive and that can also be challenging. You know, I think
mm,
people's energy in once you get into a deep breathwork session, you know, that taking on other people's energy is a real thing in
yeah.
those moments. But then there's also loads of different types of breath work. It's a little bit like fitness. You know, you've got CrossFit, running, powerlifting. It's the same with breath work, where you've got these like really deep, I would call transformational types of breath work, like
Mm,
rebirthing, where you can go really deep into your subconscious and you can really do healing. It's been my experience, like I said, of releasing
yeah.
emotions and trapped energy. And then you've got right at the other end, very functional breath work, where I've also really benefited from these techniques as well, of managing stress, being able to get to sleep really quickly. And then you've got stuff in the middle that you can do all sorts with it. It's amazing. You can increase your endurance, you can improve your posture, digestion. Yeah, it's so powerful what you can do with the breath. For anyone listening that wants a bit of a starter, like James Nestor's got a book called Breath, which it's a great introduction to the power of breath work and all the things that it can do. I found that really useful at the start of my journey.
You know, it brings up to my mind this idea of language and breath. You know, when we look at people who tend to be good orators, a lot of times they have this cadence that draws us in, or they use these giant flowery words of rhetoric. And, but when you change your speech patterns, you're changing your breath. And in some ways, a great orator or a great speaker is exchanging breath with the crowd. And it's like a tide going back and forth. Kind of interesting to think about, right?
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that analogy. And yeah, I think up until recently, probably professional speakers or executives that were trained with speech coaches were probably the only people, and maybe some of the top athletes that were actually trained on the breath. Outside, I would say, of more holistic, maybe like yogis and so on, that had, continued these more ancient practices. But yeah, it's great to see that there's more and more conversation happening all over about the power of the breath and breath work. Because yeah, I think it's just the most underappreciated thing in the human body, where I think that's probably because we just do it unconsciously all day and all night. But yeah, when we're conscious of it, it's so powerful.
It blows my mind just to like, this is why I love having these conversations. There's so many things that I begin thinking about. And you're right. Breath is something that we all have. And it's, you know, it's something that you can do consciously or you can do unconsciously. In a weird sort of way, I feel like we're at this pivotal moment in life where we're beginning to understand that we are way more powerful than we've ever thought about. Like no one knows, like, how do you grow your hair? No one knows how you do that. But we're only beginning our breath. Like we can't learn how to grow our hair yet. Like we're just learning, okay, I can breathe or I can not try to breathe, you know, but it's still going to happen. Like I feel like we're just becoming conscious of what kind of a species we really are. And I think that the breath is like the first part of really beginning to understand what is possible in this next evolution of who we are and what we're becoming. It's kind of exciting to think about, man. I love it.
Really is. Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And yeah, I think quite often in life, the most simple things can be the most powerful and profound. And yeah, it's definitely something I don't take for granted anymore. And I love the realization that you said there about, you know, it's the first thing we do in this life and the last thing we do in this life, but there's so many breaths in between. And, you know, we can, if we can be more conscious about those breaths, yeah, we can do great things particularly for our energy and for our health.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about it. If you look at a lifespan as a series of breaths, I think people would choose their words much more wisely. You know, like you only have this many breaths. You better pick some good words, and you better try to expect some good change over here because every breath, one's gone. You know.
Absolutely.
When you think about, I was reading through some of the Unbound ideas, and you talk about business performance and founder performance. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. Like how are those related? Is it fractal? Is the founder performance part of the business performance, or what's going on there?
Yeah, so it's something that me and Rich are both really passionate about with this community, because we're building the community that we wish we'd had at the start of our journey as founders, because there's loads of information out there. You know, I think the way that the world is now, nobody's short of information. But what we're trying to do is trying to just distill the things that we've found the most useful and make them really simple and accessible for founders. And what we've found that, you know, if the founder in the business doesn't look after themselves, the business performance isn't going to be maintained for very long. And what most founders are wanting to do, they're wanting to grow their business and build these like really cool and exciting businesses. And we think doing that in a conscious way that also looks after the founder is the way to building a sustainably successful and happy business for everyone in it, and particularly the founder. And a lot of that comes down to things like working on mindset, because I've found that running a business is probably the biggest personal development course you could ever take, because it just shows you every corner of your limiting beliefs and self-sabotaging thoughts and riding the ups and downs. And we want to be there to support the founders that we work with. And one of the big things we do, I've got on here actually, is journaling. So we've got an Unbound founders journal. This has been a game changer for me, of just asking myself really, really good questions every day about checking in with myself. How am I feeling? How's my energy? What do I need to do? Who am I showing up for today? What are my whys? What am I focusing on today? And, you know, what do I want to get out of the day? Yeah. So for me, it's been a game changer of just, being more present with every day. I guess maybe that part of that comes with being 41 years old as well now, that growing up and getting a bit older, you know, you start to appreciate these things.
Yeah. Especially if you are a founder and you find yourself running in the red, or you find yourself building something in the beginning and you already have an established relationship. I think a lot of founders find themselves I'm trying to run this business so that my family will be better, but you're actually taking all your time away from your family. Like it's such an incredible tightrope you try to walk, and the things you tell yourself in order to get up every day. And like, I'm only gonna get 3 hours of sleep, but I got to do this. And oh my God, I'm not hanging out with my kid, my wife. I got to do this bill. Like, but the most important thing is this business has to run. You know, like, how do you walk that tightrope?
Yeah, it's always a challenge, I think, isn't it? And
Yes.
as someone who I like to achieve, and there's always something innately with me I really want to do really well. That's definitely a line I've walked a lot of the
Yeah.
past, and especially taking out of the bank account of credits with family,
Yep.
friends, the sleep account as well as all
Yep.
often running the red. And yeah, my journey as a founder has been like figuring out what does the best balance look like for me. And yeah, running that sleep account in the red for days and days and days just is a recipe for disaster for me, because it means that I make poorer decisions. I show up with less energy, less enthusiasm, I'm less creative. So yeah, this kind of pushing everything to the limit mentality that seems to have kind of like slipped into the narrative in modern day culture, especially around founders and entrepreneurs and this hustle hard culture. Yeah, I'm definitely a proponent of working hard, but
Sure.
working smart and working on the right things and working on things that, are going to support your life. There's definitely been times in my life where I've like looked back and I'm thinking, well, why am I doing all this?
I think it speaks to the idea of, and maybe this gets back to breath, and maybe this gets back to where we are, or maybe this gets back to a couple guys in their 40s, but this idea of a lifestyle company. Like, if you're going to build something, shouldn't you want, and I don't know, this is probably depends on the actual founder or the actual person that wants to do something, but does there come a point in time for me, there comes a point in time where like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, do I really want to work this hard forever? Like, is this what I'm doing? Like, first off, do you love it? Do you want to do it? And how much money are you making? And like, what are the sacrifices? Is that something that you would turn to journaling for, is to answer those questions for yourself?
Yeah, it is. And also I'm grateful to also have a great support network myself, which is another reason why I'm so passionate about Unbound. I've got a great wife who, because she's a coach, she often asks me great questions. And she asked me one a couple of years ago. She asked me a really good question, a really fucking good question. It was, when are you going to start enjoying your life? Because it was always, right, well, I'm going to work really hard, so in a few years we'll get to this point. And that was a never ending cycle for me, where there was always something else. And actually, what am I doing? I now live in Mallorca in the Balearic Islands, a beautiful island where there's so much great stuff going on around me. And now it's being conscious of having a balance of enjoying life right now fuels my energy and fuels my ambition for the work projects in my life. So yeah, it gives me more, and I show up with more energy and more ideas when I'm living life to the full outside of work as well.
I love it. And I think it speaks to this idea that you only have the present moment. And right now in this present moment, whether you're streaming your consciousness or you're working on a project that you like to work on, or maybe you're taking some downtime, whatever you're doing in this moment, it's nice. And you realize, like, okay, right now I don't have a problem, but what if you only have another 4 months of operating income? It's real easy to get stuck over there. But that draws out all your creativity too, right? Like, if you're focusing on what could happen next month, how do you balance that? Like, hey, you're running in the red over here. How do you decide, I'm going to focus on the now and do the best job I can today versus worrying about the operating income next month? Like, what do you do to balance that?
Yeah, so I've got a few tools that I use. So yeah, the journal is definitely one where helps me to zoom out. And because I think when you're building a business or when you're doing many things in life, it's very easy to get stuck in this, just looking at your life and what's going on from a very magnified, focused point in time and over exaggerating both the ups and the downs. So I think for me, journaling has helped me to zoom out and see, what's the bigger picture? Where's the longer term trend going? And then also make sure that I'm making times for, my friends, family, for me, doing things that are exciting for me. And then the other thing that I've always kind of in recent years make sure I'm doing is having a mentor and a coach myself, to ask me really good questions and support me and challenge me, and hold me accountable. I find that, that's really, really powerful for me, is having someone in my corner, but that is going to ask me the tough questions and, make sure I'm keeping myself accountable.
It's interesting. Sometimes when I think of breath work, I think of patterns of breathing. Like, we spoke about one earlier with like the rebirth one, or some people have the 4 quick ones in, 1 out. Do you think that there's a relationship between the patterns we breathe and the patterns in our life of success and failure?
100%, definitely. Yeah, for sure. I think you can, certainly in terms of someone's nervous system, their energy levels, their health habits, you could sit and look at how someone breathes and you'd have a fairly good indication of how they're feeling moment to moment. There's different breathing deviations that we have that have a big impact on our life. And when you have the compounding impact so that these breaths have over years and years and years, they don't have, they have some effect in the short term, but over years and years and years, they have a really big impact. Things like, when we're surrounded by technology and like typing on emails on a computer, quite often our body's natural reaction for some people can be to hold the breath, or to not be in a great posture. And that affects your breathing, whether you're breathing diaphragmatically or up into the chest. These things have a big knock-on impacts, not only on our health, but also on our energy and our nervous system as well, because the breath and the nervous system are intrinsically linked. And for a lot of people, if you're experiencing challenges around dealing with stress and pressure, the breath can be a great way to relieve that. Because my view is that stress has become this really triggering word where whenever we talk about stress, it's negative, but actually there's a completely different reframe that we can have around stress, because the stress responses in our body, that we've evolved with these stress responses for a reason, because it helps us, if it happens in the way our body's designed. So when we experience a stress response, it switches everything on. We're energized, we're focused, whether that's getting a work project done on a short deadline, or, doing a exercise movement that's very intense, or getting out of danger, stepping out in front of an oncoming car. Without that stress response, probably get hit by the car. So it's really important that it happens. But the challenge becomes when we get stuck in a stress response and we can't get out of it, and we can't relax when we want to relax, or sleep when we want to sleep, and recharge and replenish our body. And that for me is one of the most powerful things I've taken from breath work and understanding my body better, is that I understand how I can shift through the gears in my nervous system and be in the zones where I want to be. And when I want to be switched on, I'm switched on. I can be focused and productive. But then when I want to relax and recharge, then I know how to get into those states as well. And, I think learning about how your body works is just, I wish they taught us this stuff at school. Along with a few other things.
It's so, just thinking as you're talking, that if you breathe a certain way for 10 years, you're training your body to use oxygen in a certain type of way. It could be the same way we have limiting beliefs. Maybe that's a product of limiting breath, or patterns. And it's really amazing to just breathe and think about all the things that are happening.
100%. So my My grandma, for example, she's suffered for many, many years with something called vertigo, where she went to the doctors and they prescribed her to try and stop the symptoms, but never got to the cause of what was going on. And when I started to learn about the breath, I realized, well, just looking at how she breathes and how she reacts when she's stressed, these vertigo attacks always happened after a really stressful moment in her life, because her behavior over decades and decades and decades, when she gets stressed, she would breathe short, sharp breaths into her upper chest, and that's really activating for the nervous system. And so what was happening for her is a nervous system would get into overdrive, and the only way that her body's only resolution for her nervous system being activated was to have a vertigo, put her down on the bed. She would be sick in bed for a few days, no choice but to rest, and then she would recover. But she'd never been taught how her body and how her nervous system works, but understanding that and then changing the way that she breathed has been a game changer for her. So yeah, I think it's really empowering for me for people to discover what the healing power of what's going on in your body. You know, I think when your body's showing symptoms, medication is not always going to be the best solution. You know, if it's not getting to the root cause, I think trying to get to the root cause of what's going on, you know, I'm not a medical practitioner, so I'm not saying stop taking your medication. Right. But for me, it's like taking power and taking control of your own health and like trying to get to the root cause of what's going on. I think the more that we can discover things like breath work, somatic body techniques, you know, there's a lot more like testing available now and that links all of these things together rather than just treating symptoms in isolation. And then, you know, sometimes these medications have side effects that lead to side effects that lead to side effects. So, yeah.
Yeah, I never understood that. Like, there's really no such thing as a side effect. It's just another effect. They just say that this effect will cure your headache, but this other effect will give you bloody diarrhea. You know, like there's all these other effects, but they're all the same level of effects. Like they just try to use language or semantic trickery to be like, this is a side effect. You know, it's interesting to think about it. And I do believe that we are on the cusp of changing the way in which we can heal ourselves. And as much as I look at big pharma sometimes and I get upset with them and the way the medical system is, maybe it was necessary. Maybe we didn't know as a species. Like we're just trying to solve the damn problem. Man, that pill made me feel better. I didn't have to think about it for a while, but maybe now we're at a point where we cannot move forward until we realize we can't just mask the symptoms anymore. This is not working. There's people all around the world that are having a mental health crisis. We find ourselves on the precipice of war, blowing money left and right. Like covering up the symptoms doesn't work. We have to solve the problem. And maybe the easiest way to do that is just take a breath.
It's one potential solution for quite a few things.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be interesting if you had the world leaders just sit down together and maybe just participate in some sort of breath circle or you know, just to take a moment before they started ripping into each other. But you know, even in your own relationship, do you use these techniques? Like for me and my wife, sometimes if things get heated, you know, it's always okay. This is a conversation where, you know, you got to remind yourself the purpose of an argument is not to win, it's to solve a problem. You know, and so in difficult situations, is there a certain breathing technique that you use to like try to center yourself?
Yeah, there's a really, I find it a really profound technique called coherence breathing.
Okay.
Which is great for grounding yourself, but then also with practice, you can also change your emotional state. So there's a load of scientific research around coherence breathing, and a lot of top athletes are actually using this because they want to get into a certain state before a big game. They don't want to necessarily be fired up and wasting energy by being overexcited. They want to be calm and peaceful before a big game. And so you can apply the same techniques that a top athlete's using before a big game in difficult moments in your life, you know, in a meeting at work or in an argument with your spouse or partner. Yeah, I've found that it's a very quick technique that you can use to just reconnect with yourself, center yourself, and then also, as I say, with practice, you can shift it. So if you're feeling sad, angry, you can start to, with practice, shift to states that you choose. So more pleasant states, quite often they would be.
Yeah. Can we do a breathing exercise? Like, can you run me through that?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
Okay. So, all right, George. So if you just close your eyes.
Okay.
And then just tune into your body. And then just notice how you're feeling. See if you can just notice what emotional state are you feeling? What emotion is most resonating for you right now? And then whenever you're ready, just start to slow your breath down. So breathing in and out of your nose. Start to take slower and deeper breaths than you normally would. And then as you're doing that, just start to shift your attention to the area of your body where your heart is. Just keep breathing slowly and deeply into your heart. And as you're doing that, see if you can remember a time in your life where you felt a really pleasant emotion. Could be joy, happiness, excitement. Just try and pick one. And breathe that feeling slowly and deeply into your heart. If your mind starts to wander, that's okay. Just try and remember that feeling. Breathe it slowly and deeply into your heart. And then whenever you're ready, just return to your normal breathing with your eyes closed. Just tune back into your body and notice any subtle shifts in how you're feeling. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. How was that for you?
Really grounding and really beautiful.
Yeah?
Even like a sense of time dilation in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that. I was like, whoa, this is. I want to be careful with the words that I use. I would say time dilation in some ways. Like I felt like I was actually with my wife and we were on a vacation and could really experience it. It's
Beautiful.
amazing how fast you can go there.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you
Thank you for
ever
that.
done a technique like that before?
I have read a little bit of breath work, but I have
Mm.
never sat down and practiced it. I've done some things before a very stressful meeting to just to try to bring my heart rate down, but I've never infused intention in it like that. That's beautiful.
Amazing. So with that particular technique, with practice, the feeling and the shift that you can get in your emotions can get stronger and stronger as you build the connection between your brain and your heart. So I think we did that for about a couple of minutes there. So great that you felt like that experience from such a short amount of time. And yeah, just with practice, that will get faster and quicker to the point where if you really practice it, you can do it, that technique, with your eyes open when you're in a conversation with someone. So I love to do it where I notice if I'm not really that present in the conversation, it's almost like just a feeling that you can switch back into and really quickly ground yourself and switch to a different emotional state. So yeah, I really love this technique. I think it's great.
Yeah. I'm not, I like to read about neuroscience, and it seems to me in some ways what's happening is that it's like the neuroplasticity, like you're fundamentally changing the meaning, or you're reinfusing meaning into an event, or you're able to recall that meaning in a way that is much more tangible and really call upon that and control it in some ways. It's really amazing to think about.
Yeah, it's so empowering. I believe, because quite often we think about emotions as these things that happen to us, and we don't have any control over them. But the emotion is just a chemical reaction that happens in about 60 seconds in our body, and then we have a feeling that comes after that, and that's what we put a whole story to, based on our experiences through life, that this emotion feels like this to me, and then we create this whole story. But what you can do with techniques such as this, you can shift to a different state, have a different feeling, and have a different energy that's going on in your body. Because coming back to this, like how powerful the body is, we can't necessarily think our way out of an emotion all the time, but what we can do is we can use the body to actually take us to a different place. It's, with really extreme emotions, it's more challenging and can take more practice, but yeah, that power is definitely within us, because from the heart, it sends 7 times the amount of data to our brain than the brain sends to the heart. So, that for me just shows the power of understanding how our body works. And, in these more challenging moments, it can be really empowering for us to know that, we can have some control over things, or we can influence our experience of what's going on.
It blows my mind to think that we really don't know anything. Like, we don't thoroughly understand what's happening. The idea that comes to mind is that over the internet, you and I can have this connection where we can do a breathing exercise together. And just by listening to the words and the technique that you're talking to me, I can get a better sense and a clearer understanding of the environment around me. Somehow, through the breath, through our words, even though we're on the internet, we can communicate in a way that can fundamentally shift the way we model reality. That is fucking mind-blowing to me. Like, right? And like, we're not even next to each other. Like, it's so crazy to think about.
It really is, mate. It really is. Yeah, and things like, I think you're absolutely right. I think we're just starting to we're only at the beginning of discovering what's going on here. Things like the frequencies that our heart emits, from a radius in our body. There's a lot of science behind this now, of like, actually, when you come into a room and you feel the energy's a bit weird in the room. Well, yeah, because our heart is emitting all of these frequencies that we can, if we're in tune with our body, we can pick up on this stuff. And yeah, I think we've got superpowers within all of us that we can tap into. And I think the more that we can uncover this stuff, I just love it. I think it's so exciting. I think the human potential is incredible. I think we've got so much that we can still to learn about how our bodies and our minds work. I think it's just very exciting for me. I've always had a deep passion for this stuff, and I'm grateful to be kind of doing it as part of my work now, which is great.
That is, it's part of your mission. Like the word awareness comes to mind, and when you start thinking about breath, you think about awareness. And I read an article not too long ago that I can't cite the article. However, the article, paraphrasing here, was something along the lines of, when you walk into a room, you instinctually take a big breath. And in that big breath, your olfactory senses are processing all the people around you. Like, you see, sometimes you get this vibe like, oh, I think they're having problems in their relationship, or, oh man, this girl, whoa, I don't know about that. Or this guy is kind of an asshole, or, whatever that information is coming to you. Might that be coming to you through the breath and like the way we process information through all like that? That's if you just look at different animals do it, like why wouldn't we do it?
I think the breath was the start of the journey for me, but I think kind of like being more in tune. I was so disconnected from my body. I was so in my head. I was in a very logical, structured career. And I'd just become so disconnected from my body. And I think for me, when I've reconnected with my body and understood and been able to tune in and listen to what's going on, I think you start to become more aware of what's going on around you in terms of energy and other people's emotions. And, when I always remember a conversation I had when I got my first promotion to become a manager. And I remember my manager said to me, you need to work on your EQ. You need to work on your emotional intelligence, because I was quite a young leader, and it made sense to me. So my head went, right, I'm going to read all the books on EQ. And I was just like, I felt like a fraud that I was playing this game of like trying to be in touch with someone's emotion and going almost like a process checklist. Okay, what's the next question I should ask on the list? And I feel like I'm getting it now, where actually by being more connected with my body, I can be more connected with what's going on with other people and almost like intuitively understand, okay, something's not quite right with George today. I'm just going to check in and see how he's doing. And, human to human, just like see what's going on for him. And that's kind of like part of the power that I found of these, like I said at the start, 50% is in the mind. And then I believe like the other 50% is like, the mind is powerful, but so is the body, so is our consciousness and all this stuff that we don't really understand yet, but we all feel it. We all know that intuitively that something's going on there, even if we've not, understood it down to like, understood in that we can teach it in a science class.
That brings up a good point. Do you feel like this shift that you're talking about now, do you feel like this is something you learned, or do you feel like this is something that was revealed to you?
I feel like it was revealed to me. Yeah. So I think if you'd have told me about some of this stuff logically, where I am now versus when I did that first breathwork class 7 years ago, I think if you'd have told me this stuff, I'd have been like, you're talking some woo-woo nonsense here, mate.
Totally.
But I think when you experience, like when that's like your lived experience, that you just felt it, and like, no one can kind of take that away from you, really, that you feel it.
Yeah, I think it was Carl Jung who spoke about there's some things that can't be learned. They can only be developed inside of you.
Yeah.
And maybe this comes back to trauma. Maybe we all have to live a certain amount of trauma so that something can develop inside of us. And then we find these modalities to help bring us out, whether it's breath work or psychedelics or sound healing. What do you think about that? Might there be some sort of test we're going through, or what's your philosophical take on that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think these are the things that when I think about what are the things I'm interested in, it's always these like never ending journeys, these constant learnings, whether it's personal development or
Yeah.
like understanding like how to get the most out of your body and mind or business. You know, these are all just like never ending journeys where it's really challenging. Lots of stuff to learn. I don't know. That's where all my mind and head has always been pulled to. I think it's really fascinating.
Yeah. Like I you know, when people in construction, they'll snap lines on stuff and then they'll have a line they know where to cut and things like that. And in some ways, it seems to me at a certain stage of your life, something snaps, whether you have to break and then it snaps, but there's an alignment that you begin to see happening. And I hear it in the way you're describing your journey. Like all of a sudden, look, George, I'm doing this thing that I love doing now. And I'm over in this place I love to be. And you should meet my beautiful wife, George. Like, you know, I'm not saying that there's not any problems or stress out like that, but there's something to be said about your worldview and alignment, right? And breath, like all these things seem to be in alignment with one another.
Yeah, I think so. And I think if I look back in my life at all the most, it sounds so corny and cheesy, all the most difficult and challenging moments, they've always been the doors that have opened to finding something amazing. That I think if one thing I feel like I'm good at is like trying to take the positive out of situations. And I think if you're able to do that, if you're able to reframe what's going on and learn from those moments, I think they can be the accelerators to go in either a new direction or take things up to another level. You know, for me, you know, I discovered breathwork because I was on the edge of a burnout, because I was under so much pressure at work and I didn't like all the things that I'd done before, healthy eating, working out in the gym, you know, they weren't working for me because it was all from the head. And it took that like really difficult moment for my wife to think, right, well, what can I do to help? Well, you know, let's book him in this breathwork class. And thankfully that was the thing for me. You know, I'm not saying breathwork's the thing for everybody, but I think for me, having that, being able to reframe in those difficult moments or more challenging moments in life is, it's been amazing for me anyway.
Yeah. I think it echoes our conversation in those moments of despair when, you know, you're desperately searching for meaning. You know, that's when you find yourself alone with your breath. And we've already spoken about it. Sometimes the breath can be a way to retrain your mind to see the world differently or see your situation differently. And sometimes it's in those quiet moments of despair that we take this giant issue that makes us want to jump off a bridge and turn it into the catalyst that makes us want to climb the tallest building.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And being able to go deep in those sessions and like see what's really going on, like outside of what is my conscious mind thinking of, and like what's sat beneath. I'd always read about loads of successful people, like enlightened people using mindfulness meditation. I've always kind of struggled with that because I've got a really active mind and I just get frustrated sitting there. So I think if you can find what works for you and what works for your body, for me, it was breath work. It was being able to just show up and breathe. Got me to that really deep meditative place where, you can just like get back to who you really are. I think that's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah. I heard a quote one time that was something along the lines of self-awareness, self-respect, and self-love. I think it's really wonderful to begin seeing that you're perfect. If you just take time, if you just take a breath, you know, where you just see the world a little bit more clear, man. It's amazing to think about.
Yeah. I mean, coaching lots of different people with breath. A lot of people have kind of like opened up to me with what's going on. And I think self-love is like something I'd struggled a lot with along my journey. You know, that voice in my head was always my own biggest critic. And I think those thoughts have a lot of power. You know, I think these words that we say to ourselves, you know, they're not just throwaway thoughts that don't have an impact. I think they impact our health, our beliefs, our identity. Like So I think, find ways that you can reprogram those thoughts and have more self-love and self-compassion for yourself in the journey, and be able to zoom out and see where you out of the day-to-day ups and downs, and see, where are you going, how are you doing in the long run. I think most people will find that actually you're doing all right. And
when I think about the conditioning that puts in our minds this negative feedback loop of you're not enough, or you don't have this, or I can't have that, or I won't be happy until I get this, all that negative feedback loop, or all that internal monologue or internal dialogue that we carry with us and tends to manifest itself. Do you think that just having conversations like this and making changes in your life will affect the next generation and maybe start to stifle some of that sort of negative talk, start putting in place a better algorithm for people to run on in the future?
I hope so. Yeah. I think if people find tools and what works for them to get out of this almost like preconditioned programming that we've got to want stuff, to need stuff, when actually the most important things in life are generally already here and already with us. We're just kind of like a bit like we talked about with the breath, such amazing things are just happening in the day-to-day moments that we just can all almost take this stuff for granted, for wanting stuff that really doesn't mean that much. Without getting the tinfoil hat on, I'm not sure if everyone wants all this stuff out there, but I think the power of connection over the internet, and messages getting out there, and alternative views, and people being able to share what's working for them. I'm pretty optimistic that the future can be bright, and not just the next generation, that this generation can create a really happy and empowered life for themselves.
I see so much more meaningful events happening, whether it's conversations with people, or when I look at the foundation of what you're doing with Unbound, like, just listen to the terminology, unbound, like you're freeing people, and you want to find ways to help people live a better life. Your wife is a coach. Look at all of these ways in which people are beginning to develop themselves, to develop other people, instead of trying to be in a position where, like, I'm going to extract this person's labor. Now we're finding ways to connect with people, to make ourselves better. And in doing so, we're making the world better. Like, I get goosebumps just thinking about this. I see that same change happening. And I think you're right. Why can't it happen in this generation? Slow it first and then all at once, right?
Yeah. And I feel like it's like a journey where, before, someone would have to go through their whole life, have these lived experiences, and then pass that down to the next generation. And you maybe learn from a few people. And then obviously, like, books came along, and, that accelerates it. Then you've got television and radio, and now the internet. I feel like it's just getting easier and easier to become faster and faster at shortcutting the mistakes and shortcutting the lessons, and actually getting to the truth of what's going on and what works for you. And so I think that journey of I think there's definitely challenges around technology with distractions, and there's these billion-dollar companies trying to extract our attention and our focus from other things in life. But I think there's a flip side to that, where if used in the right way, I'm loving having this conversation, George. And without technology, that wouldn't be able to happen.
It's on some level, I think that AI or technology is really teaching us how to communicate effectively. And by communicate, I mean convey meaning to one another. Language, while beautiful, words are but a fragment of language. And if we don't define our terms in a discussion, we can just talk right past each other. And it's so easy for your words to turn into fists and to turn into anger and these obtuse emotions that we don't even know what the hell they really are. But all of a sudden, we can put an image together with some words and some music behind it. I'm like, oh, that's very loving. Or, even though I can't thoroughly describe it, I understand the meaning more. And I think that's what's happening in this world, is this connection of coming together. And I think technology is a while it could be used to separate people, I think the end goal of technology itself is to bring people together. And that's what we're seeing. It's messy, but that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. Definitely. And that's what we're trying to leverage in Unbound, for founders, shortcutting their learning process in business. We've got a virtual community of people all over that can connect and share what's going on for them, their ups and downs, their wins. I think there's so much place for learning and community using technology that, you can connect people outside of your immediate radius. And I think I think for me, you can't beat a face-to-face connection in a community, but having an online one with people that are specific to what you need in your life.
Yes.
So much power in that, because, unless you move to an island full of founders, then it's difficult to find that.
Yeah. And even then, those people don't want to talk to you. They're like, you're not.
All on the beach.
Yeah. There's something to be said about finding your tribe and finding your community, and technology definitely allows you to do that, to be able to connect with someone who may be going through something similar to you, regardless of where they are or what they look like or what their exact box is. Like, there's someone else that gets it. Oh my God, I did this, I did that. And it's like, I'm not alone. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. So true. So true.
Man. Tristan, I love this conversation. I can't wait to learn more about Unbound. And I think that what you're doing is amazing. And shout out to Rand and Randall Hansen's book, Heal. I know we're both co-authoring, doing some awesome stuff in there. Hopefully we're going to get some panels together and talk more about it. I want it to be more of a movement. I want it to be people coming and giving their ideas of how they heal. And I'm hopeful that what we're doing will trigger other people to come and share how they're fixing their life and their world and the techniques they use, and we can put them all together and make it happen. But before I let you go, do you have any closing thoughts, or where can people find you? What are you excited about? What else you got, my friend?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn, Tristan Rushworth. So if people want to reach out, say hello, ask any questions, would love to connect with you. And I think you mentioned there about this journey of people being on of healing and fixing, and the thing that probably my biggest takeaway from all this is that the power's inside of you to change and heal and fix so much, whether that's whether it's reconnecting with your body and your emotions or your health, or tapping into what feels good for you around work and business. So I guess that's my my parting thought, in that there's so much wisdom inside of us that if we can get past this racing mind and start to reconnect with who we really are, that I find that there's so many answers that lie within us. And then if that's powered by supportive mentors and community, that's it for me. That's the magic for me.
Yeah, I think that's a huge step for people. I think on some level, we've been trapped into this idea of scarcity. So a lot of people wake up, myself included, I spent a large part of my life going out and doing things because I felt like I had to. And only until later in life did I realize, you know what, my whole life I've read these biographies and I've read these mythologies and all these stories about people saying, why don't you do what you love? And it's I never had the courage to do it. But then I finally, at the age of 50, I'm like, maybe there's something to it. Maybe often you hear in stories or myths, people say oh, I would die for this cause. But how many people really live for that cause? How much rewarding can your life be if you choose? Choose to do, I'm going to do this thing I love. But all these questions come up, how are you going to make money? No one's going to believe that. You can do that. I don't know, but those are the things that you must just set aside for a little bit, even if it's just a second. If you can begin setting those things aside for a second, okay, is it possible?
Yeah.
Maybe. And then all of a sudden that clarity, those things start to fall away and life unfolds in front of you in a way hey, maybe there is a path. Maybe I could do what I want to do and be successful at it. Isn't that such a beautiful thing to begin thinking about?
Beautiful. Really is. It really is. And there's a quote which I love. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. And I think for people that are like sitting on the fence or doubting themselves, that, you know, go after, I think go make it, you can go make it happen if you really believe that you can. I think so many people can. But for me, it was kind of like slightly different. I think I didn't have this one thing where I was like, this is what I want to do. And I almost like, because I wasn't in a career that was my purpose, I'd almost like put this pressure on myself to discover my purpose. Like this was like some lost treasure, that'd be one thing that I'll find and like, right, this is it. This is my whole life's purpose. You know, I think for some people, you know, maybe you want to be a musician, or you want to play sports at the highest level. Like for some people, I think maybe the path to that is really clear. It wasn't like that for me. So I think for me, it's also been a journey of discovering that finding my purpose is not necessarily my whole life's purpose, but it's what's my purpose right now? What's the next step that I need to take that's aligned with my values, my beliefs, how I want to be spending my time, where I want to be putting my energy. And that felt like a lot less pressure when I started to realize that it's okay, so what do I want to be working on for the next 5 years rather than the next 25 years?
I love that. I think that's great. I think that's wonderful. For me too, like I didn't think, you know, I'm just going to be a podcaster. Like I kind of thought that, but I didn't realize what that meant. Like it's so nebulous. You should be that. Like, of course, if you just say that, but there's something that happens. Like I think finding your life's purpose begins with taking a step down the path of purpose. This feels right to me, even though it's really fucking scary. It feels right to me. I'm going to take this step. I'm going to take one more step, you know, and like the purpose will unfold in front of you. Like you don't know what you don't know. And so many people like let that be the thing that stops them from taking that first step. But if you just take the first step, it's like that. It's like having a flashlight. Like, okay, you take another step. Oh, there's another stone over there. I can step on that one, you know, and then pretty soon you're so far away from this life that wasn't very fulfilling. You can't turn back. You know, it's like it pulls you, it's a gravity, like it pulls you towards it, man. I want more people to do it. Like just take that first step.
Well, if you're not inspired by that, then I don't know what you will be. But that's a great analogy. I love that. Yeah, so true. That's definitely been my experience of it as well. That I would never think I would, you know, 7 years ago, I'd never think where I am now. And you know, maybe that path still keeps winding, but as long as I'm enjoying, I'm trying to enjoy the journey and enjoy the moments in between as well.
And so much self-discovery. Like you start learning about like, wow, for me on this path, I really learned, I had some real big trust issues with like the people I love the most, you know? And I was like, oh my, I'm just pushing that stuff down. Like this event that happened to me, now there's no hiding. Now I must talk about this. Oh, I don't want to talk about it. And then as soon as you talk about it, you're like, I love this person more than I've ever loved them in my life. You know, why didn't I do this 10 years ago? You know how much better my life would have been? Like life is dancing with you, and it really will conspire to help you if you just have the faith to take that step. Ladies and gentlemen, do it. One baby step. Just take one baby step today.
Love it.
Tristan, this is amazing. I hope everyone takes an opportunity to go down and investigate what you're doing, because I love the way in which you describe your path. I love the healing modality of breath, and I love the candid conversation that you're willing to put out there for yourself and help people become unbound. And I look forward to further conversations. And so truly thankful, my friend. And hang on briefly afterwards, because I'm going to hang up with our friends here, but I wanted to speak to you briefly afterwards. So ladies and gentlemen, go down to the show notes, go check out our friend Tristan. The links will be down there. That's what we got. Ladies and gentlemen, aloha.
Thank you for having me.